Welcome to the Coaching Life Podcast. I'm Pat Martin here with my pal, Coach Chris Stewart, and my other buddy, Coach Justin Roush. Fellas,
Yeah.
how's it going today?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Always you should stop by more often.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now I know the exact location.
That's right. Pull that microphone up closer to you. That way we can make sure that we're getting you here,
Gotcha.
Justin. Yeah. We don't use headphones anymore, and so I don't have a way of
totally fine.
if it sounds like one of us is getting a little quiet, I might have to do this and make sure that we're all sounding good. Like, that sounds good. I can
Yeah.
tell. Yeah, there we go. Now, yeah, Pat, Justin called me last week and was asking about some podcast technical issues, and I said, why don't you just come in while we record? That way you could see us set up. You could see us. You could see how we use Riverside now with the video and what that all looks like. Because you've got your own equipment now, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have everything that I need to do it. Just I needed that push over the edge. I think oftentimes, it's like fear of putting yourself out there and taking that leap. And so I was standing in my own way. So I think one thing I've always learned is, like I always say, anything you're trying to do, like if you can find a mentor or someone who's already doing it, why sit here and try to do it yourself and figure it all out? So I was like, gosh, man, Chris Stewart's the man. So why would I?
Pat Martin's the man.
Yeah.
He saw exactly what I have to do with the podcast configuration and setup today.
Yeah, I think for a long time, though, in anything that I've done, like, I just keep trying to do it myself, and it takes so long. And this year alone, like, I just kind of stopped doing that, and I'm like, why keep bashing my head against the wall and prolonging some dreams and some goals that I have for myself? Like, just reach out to people who are already doing it and cut that learning time in half and learn from their mistakes, instead of creating.
Yeah, that's a good word. Yeah, for sure. So we are going to chat here for a little bit about the coaching life, and one very prevalent issue that's in sports right now that's probably going to leak into high school sports. We'll talk about that here in just a little bit, but then after we're done, we're going to kind of help you see how you can get your podcast up and rolling. What's your idea for your show?
Well, the name of the show will be the Walk On Academy. But the whole idea of the show is to just kind of, I think, get people to understand that there's a mentality that it takes to be a walk-on, and I just like to tell that story. And I think today, when you look at the transfer portal and different things that we've kind of mentioned, like, I think there's going to be more people who are going to have to take this walk-on mentality to pursue their goal of playing sports at the next level. And that's one thing. When I was a walk-on, gosh, this would be 20 years ago this season.
Wow.
You feel like you're on an island. You already feel rejected because you didn't. Signing day was last week, and I didn't get to do that. No one called me. I just sat in a room, like, kind of waiting by a phone, waiting for someone to call me and give me that chance. Because people said if you achieve all these goals and you break these records and you lead the state in this, you're going to get a scholarship. And then next thing you know, signing day came and went, and you wake up the next day, you're like, now what? And so when I walked on at OU, man, it just kind of, I'm kind of always told myself, I'm like, you're the Walk-On Academy, Justin, and then just over the years and becoming this adult, I think I've told a lot of people this, like, when I finished playing sports, like, I was just kind of a lost soul. I'm like, I was an athlete my whole life. Now what am I? Who am I? Like, I just always identified as this football player. And you walk through Walmart and people say hi to you and talk to you when you played, and then as soon as you finish, those same people you can see 3 aisles down cut in because they don't have time to talk to you anymore, and you're like, wow.
Yeah, there's somebody else running the football up and down the.
That's it, man. It's
Eden
just
Stadium.
move on to the next person, and then when you move into life and being a husband and having kids and being a coach, you kind of get lost in all of that with just the running and the busyness, and I kind of forgot the mentality that I held myself to playing sports, and became quite aggravated with myself on the shortcuts that I would allow myself to take. And then when you start coaching kids and you're like, give all you've got, give us don't waste any moments. And here I am. I go home, and you're like, Justin, you're cheating yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're cheating yourself. And how can you go tell a kid to bleed for you and to sweat for you and team and family? How can you say all that stuff and then go home and be lazy? And so the last couple of years, it's just really been eating at me. And so, last year I started the LLC, the Walk On Academy, and I'm going to make custom apparel, and I've already been making custom hats, and just want to preach to people about, listen, like, there's a mentality to live by, and just because sports ends does not mean to stop living that mentality of never waste a moment and give it all you've got and beat your competition, because I do think life is a competition, and I'm here to win it. So
that's phenomenal.
We'll see everyone next week.
Right. Well, I mean, first of all, thanks for the hat.
Yeah,
Speaking of apparel,
you're welcome.
Yeah, I got one too.
we got gifted a Walk On Academy.
Well,
hat.
nothing's free in life, so.
I will say this: you guys are kind of the first couple of guys to get some, because it's one of those things. I've been making them. It's just amazing how long you'll let yourself live in this bubble of, oh gosh, I'm just so scared and I'm so nervous and.
Yeah, you think you have imposter syndrome?
Well, what do you mean?
Like, you think you're a fake?
Or why would I think that somebody might want to hear what I have to say, or what? A lot of times, what holds people back from starting a podcast or even starting a business, is this idea of so many other. There's 5 billion podcasts in the world. What do we have to say that maybe somebody might want to listen to us? But I'm sitting here thrilled, excited about your idea for a podcast, even though I know we have spent a handful of times in our conversations talking about that very issue. But you, as one who can speak to it, as one who did walk on here at High University, had incredible success. And now you're doing the same thing we are in terms of coaching youth, high school sports. That just creates another person for us to say, go listen to Justin's podcast.
Yeah.
What episode? First of all, let's back up a second. We're using my phone as one of our cameras today, but do you remember what episode we had Justin on before? Do you remember what episode number you were for us?
I thought it was in the 160 something. I thought.
Ooh, that recent.
It hasn't been that long ago. Yeah.
Because we're at 189 right now, I believe.
Time goes kind of quick, so I thought it was in the 60s.
Yeah.
That could be way
Nope,
off.
134.
34? Okay.
Yeah,
134. Back when we were just doing audio, right? It was no video, I don't think, for that one.
No.
But it was remotely. I know we were in 3 different locations.
No, actually,
I think we were on Zoom video or something, but the podcast itself was just audio. But I do remember. I think
Justin
I was on
was
an
at my
OU football trip. I think I was in another.
I think
town.
you were away. He
Ball
was at my
State.
house.
Yeah, that's right. We chimed in and went to Pat's house. And
the title of that episode was "Think You Deserve It? Prove It."
Yeah, there you go.
There it is.
Kind of fits in line with what you're thinking there.
Yeah, I mean, because my wife, she tells me, she's like, "Gosh, you're such a social bug." Like I thrive on talking to other people, and I've really put myself out there the last couple of years in trying to talk to people. And if you go into a room of people, you try to find someone who might need a discussion. And strike up discussions. And specifically talking about males, I've talked to a lot of males who, when you really start stripping away all the feelings and emotions of life, and you can just talk to them and speak to their heart a little bit, you realize just how many males are walking around struggling in life, feeling small, feeling like they're not, like they're failing, they're not providing enough, they're not doing enough. And so then I reflect back to a part of my life, which, I walked on at OU. 2005 was when I was here, and I just remember being very satisfied with who I was and the work that I was putting in and the way that I was changing my body and changing my mindset. And then when I graduated in 2005, moved right away to Louisiana, and so my wife could pursue grad school there. And when you move to a place when no one knew you, no one knew anything that you had achieved or done, you're like, well, who am I?
Yeah.
I'm Justin, this football player, but no one knows that. So, you lay awake at night, just daydreaming, like, man, all those years, all those stadiums you went to, and the places you played, and the fans that screamed for you, and now you're sitting here and no one's screaming for you at all. And so then I thought, man, if I could just take that mentality, bring it back, live that life again, and tell men and women who are struggling, like, hey, like, you've got one life to live, you've got one go at this thing. If you're wasting it, shame on us. Like, shame on us. And a lot of this mentality has been developed too. I've been preaching for 15 years, so I remember the mentality that I had when I played at OU, and just how much I loved it. And I remember my wife talking to me years ago, and she, in a discussion, my wife is super honest. Everyone should have a super honest spouse. And she just looked at me and she says, when I met you, you had so much drive. And your wife, she knows all of your shortcomings, and when she can look at you, that resonated with me, because I'm like, she sees something different now.
She's using that in the past tense.
Yeah,
that hurts, doesn't it?
I didn't like that. But here's the thing. I lived a life for years of not liking what she said, but just on cruise, being comfortable, being complacent. And then you wake up one day and you're just like, I've had enough. I am so tired of feeling like I'm not making a difference anymore. Just so tired of it. And I've been preaching for 15 years. You preach to people about live this certain way and live for Christ and give it all you've got. But it was really until I heard this quote, and it says that when life can no longer threaten you with death, what is there? And then I went straight to scripture that tells you to die is gain. And for the past year, I've just been like, worst case scenario in my life is I die. And if I look at that as bad, then my preaching's been in vain, my life's been in vain. So now I'm just flip that switch. It's like, I will live every day. I will get after it. I will make no excuses. I will point no finger. If I don't like my circumstance, I will be the person who changes it. And worst case scenario is I die doing it.
Yeah.
And I will inherit.
And now it's worst case scenario is that I live with no purpose.
That's it. Like,
it's to die is gain.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah. By the way, this is Pat's pastor.
Yeah.
Right?
He is.
Listen to Justin every Sunday.
I don't get to listen to him much.
He's with the kids.
I'm usually downstairs
that's
trying to make as much noise as we can to distract everyone else. That's part of Justin's challenge when he's standing in front of the pulpit. But
well, here's the thing too. Just listening to Pat say that, because Pat's been, as the minister, I get all the credit if there's a special gift that the church gives or something, like they always give it to me. But he was the first person when I started preaching at the Bradbury Church of Christ. There were 17 people there my first Sunday, most of them my family, right? And then the first young couple that comes was Pat and Chastity, And Pat's been there every step of the way. He's taught the youth. As long as I've been the minister, he's taught the youth. So, Pat's been helping save souls, for a long time with me, and just never gets the credit that he probably needs, and would deserves in this life. But I've also learned that it's the next one that matters.
I was going to say, all credit can be reserved, postponed until the next.
You haven't gotten the gift card yet in October for Pastor Appreciation
No, I have.
month.
And I have actually, and I know Justin and his family, Justin and Aaron, and the kids have done. They've made sure to give me little things like that in the past. So not only them, but other people too. So I get that credit, but I want that to be. After the long list of failures and sins that the Lord reads out on the day of judgment, I hope that he says, but I guess you did okay.
Right. Come on in.
I hope that's some saving grace, but I don't need that. But yeah, it kind of hurts me to when you talk about, not becoming, and I know you're where you're where you need to be, but it would be, it's a shame when you have so much drive and so much passion to be something, and you don't get to be that. And in your case, that was a football player, and I'm sure it probably goes without saying to say that you would have loved to have played in the NFL.
Well, I mean, as a young kid, like that was your dream.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But my wife is a school psychologist, you know what I mean? So every kid that she comes across, like their dreams to play a professional sport. So I now realize that I fell right in line with a lot of people, but I just love sports.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I had a genuine love for sports. And then football, when I got introduced to it, like, gosh, I just love the smell of it, love the smell of the football, love the smell of the grass, love the soreness that came with it. Like I just ate it up. And you think you're going to play it forever. And I think that's when I say, like, I lost the mentality. It's like something was taken away, and it's like it took me about 17 years to figure out, like, it was football that you missed. And you've been on cruise for 17 years, like, just trying to figure out, like, what to do with your life. And I've been a minister for 15 of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think the struggle is real of not meeting the expectations you set for yourself. But I also, have learned that my will isn't always the will that needs to be done.
Sure.
And I think the path that I'm on has made my testimony greater than if I just would have went to the NFL and played and made a lot of money. I would have been probably a selfish human being. So now looking at my life and reflecting on it, boy, I sure like the path I have taken. I'm just disappointed that it's taken me almost 20 years after I've stopped playing to remember the mentality that I had and attack life with that same thing.
Well, I think that's part of the grind, though.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the challenge.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I think it, people would say, you played at OU, you're having success, and your last year you're having success, and you hurt your knee, and they would say, oh, that's a tragedy.
Yeah.
But I say, if you would have had not had that problem, and you would have went on to the NFL, and you never became a preacher, that would have been the bigger tragedy.
Yeah.
Because the people that you've been able to impact their lives in that role that you have now is going to a greater good than obviously you have a platform as a professional athlete, but you don't know that you're going to be able to get on the level in people's lives and be able to go around and to talk to young men and men in general about their lives and what they're struggling with. I mean, how many professional athletes are having those conversations with the public, with people in their community?
Yeah.
It doesn't get to that depth. So
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
You just sounded like Archibald Graham there.
well,
From Field of Dreams, didn't he? Didn't he?
yeah,
I was thinking
Archibald-
Archie Graham. If I had never got to be a doctor, now
that would have been a tragedy. That's
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
yeah.
I steal most of my stuff from sports
it's
or from movies.
The best sports movies in the
Yeah.
world. Yeah.
By the way, have you watched the Goonies yet?
No.
Have you seen the Goonies?
Like I met the old school Goonies.
Yeah, the old school Goonies. You know what a booty trap is, though. Yeah.
I saw that on
Let's do
your last
that again.
discussion.
Like I've never. I don't think I can't remember ever watching the Goonies.
really?
I mean, as
Can't
a
believe it.
child of the '80s,
I watched it. I watched it a lot.
Yeah,
Have you-
you were a child of the '90s, right? Like, I mean, you're.
No, right there. 83,
I mean,
right?
81
82.
I was born, so I mean,
You're born in
Yeah,
81?
yeah.
Okay.
You're
So all the late
you're
80s.
9 years younger than I am.
Yeah, we're 8, 9 years
We
old.
all-
That's prime movie watching.
Breakfast Club, Weird Science.
Oh, yeah.
Weird Science.
Yeah. So, but no.
I love weird science.
So here's what's funny. We always talk about what we're gonna chat about in our podcast, and this morning Pat did a little Chat GPT search and came up with some ideas of things that we've talked about number of times. I did the same thing. Did a little Chat GPT. Hey, here's our podcast. This is what it's about. Give us an episode conversation idea. And the first one was like talk about how to handle the mental stress of sports and develop mental toughness in your kids. And I'm like, yeah, that's good. We've talked about that quite a bit, And then and I said, give me another idea. So ChatGPT cranked out another idea. How about helping kids understand their role, even roles that they don't like, but like sitting the bench and what the value is of having a role and embracing a role for the team and how you can still contribute. And I'm like, that's fantastic. Thank you, ChatGPT. We've talked about that quite a bit too. How about something else? And here's what the third one was. The third one was, how about the transfer portal, the NCAA transfer portal, and how that mentality is working its way down, trickling down into high school sports and high school students and people now thinking about transferring from school to school for the sake of some of those other issues, playing time or having greater opportunities and whatnot. But then you come in also, Justin, with your vision for Walk On Academy as well. And I think a lot of this goes together. You know, a lot of our high school athletes are going to be walk-on athletes. They're going to need to embrace the idea of you're not being recruited very much right now because coaches are recruiting junior colleges. Yeah. They're recruiting other colleges. They're recruiting the transfer portal first, and you might need to walk on and earn from there. It's a whole different world that we're living in right now. The transfer portal is having an effect on high school athletes, not just from an indirect standpoint, but also I think like the idea of the mentality of it as well. I think very practically speaking, it's going to work its way into many states as well eventually, where state organizations are just going to allow it, just open season, transfer wherever you want with no penalty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not for sure if that's true, but I think Oregon and Texas have instituted NIL deals for their
NIL deals
at the high school level.
So there's one.
So kids can actually earn money playing high school sports in those states. So that's just it's just going to be a cascading effect down to those things.
Yeah.
Why? Why do you think it's getting there?
Well, if you're something that, listen to Chris talk right there and listening to you, something that I remember looking back when I was in high school and thinking back to, because I could still remember it, really, really well, because Walk On Academy, right? Catchphrase, earn your play. All right. My whole life, people said, do this, and this will come. And exactly everything people said would come didn't. Okay? And I reflect back. I graduated high school at 225 pounds. My freshman year at Meigs High School, I was 181. I was faster my freshman year of high school than I was my senior year. But I was 225. And when I said I didn't sign a letter of intent, like I didn't have any schools that offered me anything. And I remember coming to OU, getting that preferred walk-on spot, and that's thanks to Coach Chansey and Carson Crow. You know what I mean? They're like, is anyone talking to you? I'm like, no one. And they're like, well, come with us. So they got me a meeting up here, and I came up, and you start playing, and you're getting all these reps, and you see the scholarship guys come in, and you're like, well, gee whiz, I think I'm better than him. I think I'm better than him. You know what I mean? So then there's this comparison where you start comparing yourself to other people, which I think's good in sports. Like, you have to compare yourself. Go to camps, put yourself out there, see where you stack up. Most people get stuck to Southeastern Ohio. They're like, I'm great. Go to Columbus.
Yeah.
Right? Go to another state and then see where you stack up. And I just remember this day coming out of the weight room. This would have been my redshirt sophomore year. I came out of the weight room at Peden. I was in the shower, getting ready to go into the shower, and I was looking in the mirror. And I looked at myself, and I thought, Justin Roush, where you are today is where you should have been 3 years ago. I was so naive, and I believed everything that everyone told me about how great I was. But if I would have just compared myself to somebody else, I would have realized I was behind. So the greatest I ever was at OU, the speed I had, the strength I had, the fitness I had, is where I should have been graduating high school.
You could have been.
I could have been.
Yeah. Yeah,
Could
that's
have
a
been.
really good word
And
for high school
and
athletes
I
right
just
now.
settled because I was taking achievements
Yeah.
and prioritizing achievements and my name in the paper and setting records over, am I really as good as I need to be for someone to offer me a $100,000 scholarship? No. It took me 3 years to look in a mirror and tell myself the truth. And so when I talk about kids, it's a slippery slope for me when you tell kids you're going to start earning money in high school based upon your achievements.
Yeah.
And when I say earn your play, like, there's got to be an element where you've proven yourself to yourself. And I think a lot of times people are going to throw you money because, he's got a name, he's got some decent numbers. But who is he as a person? Because that's the thing that's going to anchor you, right, to the mentality that's going to sustain you through life. And I think that's the most important thing. And when you start throwing money changes people, especially at 17, 18 years old when you don't know how to handle it. And that's my fear, is you're giving individuals money who don't know how to handle it yet. And if they're grounded enough, that means they were raised a certain way. Fantastic. But I was raised pretty well. And if you would have given me money at 17, 18 years old, I can tell you I would have blown it.
Yeah.
And would have had a lot less to learn about myself. So I'm cautious about paying people before they've proven it over time. You get bonuses at work based upon your performance over time. And when you just get it just because you had a great year or you had 2 great years, I'm just like, what else is there to prove? You're already getting paid. So I struggle with that.
Yeah. Yeah. There are a lot of issues with where we are today, I think, with NIL, and especially the top end of it, where you are getting. I mean, you got students coming in onto college campuses having not even played a season yet, and they're rich, they're wealthy.
Yeah.
For what you said, getting money for their name and their image and their likeness, not for anything they've earned.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's coming.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I mean, we're going to be able to, got to figure out how to live in it.
Right, and I think that even speaks to from a coach's perspective, to talking about Walk On Academy from our perspective, what are we going to do as opposed to just sitting around and saying, well, it's the NIL, or it's the transfer portal, or what are we going to do to make a difference in that new world that is coming to us, and there's unless something crazy happens and we have a gigantic shift in mentality, we're going to be experiencing that. And I think about Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State.
Yeah.
And that he was offered $4.5 million to enter the transfer portal. $4.5 million just to enter the portal. So some school offered him money. So we're going to give you money to enter the portal. No guarantee that they're going to get him.
They're going to be the one to get
They
him.
just wanted him to enter the portal, right? Which is bad.
We just want you to leave Ohio State,
right? And it's like oh. And so, okay, from Ryan Day's perspective, I got
to offer him more.
Maybe, but I don't know that they did.
Yeah.
Jeremiah Smith said, I'm not leaving Ohio State. Why does he not want to leave Ohio State? What is it about Ohio State that $4.5 million? Now, I'm sure he has $1 million,
right.
or more, and I'm sure he is getting paid, like you said, and he may be getting paid more. But I think what I'm saying is the concept has to be, we can't be victims in that the world that we're going to be living in with the transfer portal and the money and everything that we have to deal with. We got to be able to succeed in that.
Let me ask you this, Pat.
Yep.
Not to cut you off. When you're watching college football this year, from preseason till bowl games, two bowl games, would you say the quality of the game is increasing or decreasing? The quality of the product of football, because that's what we're talking about. Right? We train. That's a product that we put out there for people to watch. Right? Would you say the product is getting better or getting worse?
You mean from
from an athletic standpoint? Like, clearly athletes are getting better and more physically fit, but what I look at
From a game perspective?
From a game perspective, because like bowl games, right? When guys can sit out based upon money, right? So this is the thing. Like, I'm all for people making money because I would have loved to make a little money when I was at OU. I wouldn't have left here, in debt. But just because something is coming and it's going, just because something's coming, I don't think we have to be okay with it if it's going to take away from the product. And that's my fear, is when you start making enough money, right? Money brings you a sense of false security, like, well, I'm unstoppable. I can do anything I want.
Yep.
So now you're making a 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old kid saying, I don't want to do this, because money gives you power. And you already have the problem of players stepping up to their coaches, getting in their faces. So this is what's happening. So now you're forcing the hands of coaches not having the ability to lead athletes the same way they did 20 years ago. If my coach yelled at me, I got scared. He's going to bench me. Now, if I'm making $1 million a year, even $50,000 a year at OU, my coach gets on me like, I don't care, coach. I got $50,000.
Yeah.
Like that happens, and that will continue to happen. The more these players make, and now you're going to get into the high school level, and you already have a problem where kids can stand up to teachers and yell at them and scream at them and do all of these things. And now you're going to say, come to a football field where you throw around your masculinity all over the place. And now I want you to submit to this figure here based upon what? I'm wealthy. Okay, it's hard. It's hard for people to think clearly when they have a false security that money brings. And that's all through Scripture, man.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think we've seen that slowly happen from pro sports on down. I would say 30 years ago, the thought of a pro athlete not playing a game,
right?
Because with money as a reason, that wasn't a thought, but it is now. The Browns had their left tackle this year didn't play a game, and they asked him after the game why he didn't play, and he said he made a business decision.
After the season?
It was after the game. He said this in the middle of the season.
There was one particular game he didn't play.
Yeah, he said it was a business decision. He wasn't. He might have been a little banged up, wasn't the healthiest, but he said I didn't play because it's a business decision, and that's I think what you're going to get. Yeah, I completely agree with you. What you're going to get is the exception to the rule is going to be guys that go out and are willing to do whatever it takes. Walk On Academy, that mindset, to have that mindset, regardless of their circumstance. These are going to be the exceptions, whereas before, that was life. That's how. And here's the bad thing about that: when you're outside of that realm, you don't have that option.
Yeah.
You have to have that mindset when you go into the world and you're trying to find a job, because people aren't going to love you the same that they love, because just because you can run a touchdown or because you can throw a football or hit a baseball a long way, they're not going to love you the same in the corporate world as they do in that sports world. So you have to have that, and if we're not learning that in sports, we talk about all the great things that sports can teach us, and that's part of that.
Yeah,
we're stripping that away by the transfer portal and the NIL and the money and just in general the accolades for individual achievement. We're stripping those lessons away by celebrating those types of things. It's tough. I just don't know how to combat it. I think it's got to be from a community perspective. It's got to be it can't just be. It's not about X's and O's.
Yeah,
I think kids are going to have to have a place where they feel like they belong. They feel like they have support. We've talked about last few weeks, couple months, how there's this movement in the religious world, and specifically from Christians. It's, everyone's talking about God. Everyone's talking about Jesus Christ. You see it on sports. You see it, everywhere. It's growing, and I think it's a good time to really capitalize on that and use that to build up this concept of, what is your worth, not as a player, but as a person.
Yeah.
And to steer our young athletes in that direction so that they know that my coach loves me, this place loves me, my community loves me, and I need to be here. And it doesn't matter that I'm not getting paid. It doesn't matter that I'm not playing every game or, starting for my varsity baseball team. I'm part of something, part of something greater. And that greater is something that goes beyond this world.
Yeah. The purpose is much deeper than anything that I've prepared for in this particular moment or this context.
But I could see that, it's like, I feel like our sense of community, our sense of, I guess you could say, purpose has declined as this love and need for money and, individual satisfaction, we'll say, has increased. It's like one's gone down, the other one's gone up.
The individual satisfaction is kind of the root of the transfer portal, right? I mean, bring it to high school sports, right? I mean, why? I mean, there may be some kids who look to transfer from one school to the next because the academics are a lot better at this school, or maybe there were some behavioral issues and they were getting in fights at this.
Always
one.
was. Yes, it's always been true.
You've always had that. But when you look at, if you take 50 kids that transferred this year, and you say, let's poll them and find out why they transferred, I'm going to guess 35 or more was because of sports.
And that's why the rules have changed.
Was because of sports.
That's the only piece of evidence that you need. The OHSAA has changed the rules to prevent that from happening. Now if a student transfers
to discourage that.
Well, yeah, true. It still happens, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and if we allow the money thing to go on, it's going to happen even more, because what keeps people from doing it the most right now is the fact that if you transfer to a school and you don't live in that school district, you can only play half the season for that calendar year.
Yeah, here in Ohio, you play the first half of the season, and then you have to sit out the second half. Like right now, basketball's in the second half of the season. They're getting ready to go into tournament play.
Right.
Kids that transferred from out of district, they did not move into the district. I mean, there's all these different caveats as well, right? We got an apartment in this district over here. They are not able to play.
Yeah.
They're not able to play, and not only that, not only does it hurt the team in that sense, and you, because you're only getting half a season, but you're also now adding, to that competitive balance number, which now makes your school's team appear larger than it actually is, right? Like you may only have 80 actual boys in your school district from sophomore to seniors, but your number shows you have 140 because you have a lot of different transfers.
And because of that, you're no longer a D4 school, you're a D2 school.
Now you're competing with schools that are larger than you.
Yep, depending on when you transfer in.
There's a lot of
crazy.
formulas.
You think one student is one student, but one student could be three students.
Yeah.
In competitive balance. It's interesting and tricky.
Very much so.
So
because that does not account for the fact that that maybe one of those kids moved for other reasons, right?
Yeah.
That there was I want to say legit, but there's a legitimately different reason than just
it wasn't
sports.
only sports.
You still are going to be penalized if that person plays.
I think too, like something I see, because I coach sports at Alexander, like this is southeastern Ohio, and if you just knew what kids go home to, and the life that they have, and Pat mentioned community, like if the community was more aware of how some kids' lives are at home, and these kids got to move based upon safety situations, and then they move for that reason, and there might be a penalty on them. Like, I just wish I wish there wasn't this single-minded focus on some of these issues when we talk about sports and kids and having to set out, because there are some situations that kids are leaving to make their lives better.
Yeah.
Then they get to this school where they just want to play sports because that's their out.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm sorry you got this penalty over here.
Yeah, that there could be some kind of a case by case hearing, of I know this. I mean, without mentioning any names, I know my brother at his school had a player transfer to come to his school 2 years ago who essentially was kicked out of his house. I mean, he basically found another family that said, yeah, you can finish your high school career here, and he did, and he was one of those number 3s or 7s or however many it was, because he transferred in the middle of high school, and had to sit out second half of year his junior year, and then he played his whole year senior year. But he increased that competitive balance number for him. I know that my brother even appealed that to the OHSAA and was denied, basically telling the story of this is why he's here. This is not just somebody who transferred to play ball here. He did end up being a 3-sport athlete at Fisher Catholic, but yeah, he tried that appeals process for that to be his case by case basis, and it didn't work out. And I get that. I mean, I get it. I get that they need to draw a line at some point, but it's not black and white, and it's not always black and white. Yeah.
Well, I think Pat was saying something there a second ago, and that's something I've changed in my life. I started carrying around this book so I can always write down my thoughts and not forget them. And it's good things to meditate on at the end of the day. But also something thinking back to 20 years ago when I was playing sports, at a competitive level. The change that people need to make, it's centered around that heart's condition. Now, here's that spiritual point of view on this. Like, what's the individual's heart condition? And one thing I've learned through, and this has really been hitting me hard the last 12 months, is when you look about the horizon that's out there on sports, and where is it going, where's it heading, how are we going to interact with it, like what's it look like for us, and something that I've learned the last 12 months is when I look at Scripture and I study that, like I see how much Christ was putting others before himself. And then same with his apostles, right? They're preaching and they're teaching. They're preaching the gospel, trying to save lives, putting themselves at risk. So when you talk about, like, what do we do? And to me, if you can't reach the hearts of your athletes, speak to their hearts, and saying it's not about you, but can you elevate the play of your teammate? Right, because we say family. Like I've seen sports this year. I saw kids, like, they got family. They got all these things. We have soccer hoodies that said family on it, right? And I'm just one of those guys now in my life. I'm like, I don't like just using catchphrases anymore. Don't put something on a shirt that you don't live by.
Yeah.
And that's one thing. Like, you have to touch the heart of the players. And if you can touch their heart and get them to understand that the better you make your teammate, the better the team becomes. And that's just a wonderful scriptural idea.
100%.
Like Jesus was out there elevating other people, putting others first, working himself till he was tired and exhausted, where he needed to go away and be alone, right, to get refueled and get re-energized. And I'm a believer now that serving other people and putting other people before yourselves elevates everyone. But the more you look at yourself and you're like, I'm doing this and I'm doing that, you become a very selfish human being. And that's a tough place to be when you're trying to play team sports. And last time I checked, most all sports are still team.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a good word.
It is.
What are you doing in a couple weeks?
You said, that's right, guest speaker. You said something a little bit ago, Justin, that I'd actually like to revisit, because I think this is a really valuable point that some people may have not even considered, and even have probably thought this isn't a good thing. But you actually said you need to be intentional, that this actually is a good thing. You said we need to, or kids need to, compare themselves to others.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And what's funny about that is that we spend a lot of time saying, don't compare yourself to others, right? Compete. You're competing with yourself. You're competing. You're competing to become the best version of you. But there's an aspect of comparison that is important and it's valuable, and that is when when you think that you're at the peak of who you are, that you're at the peak, that when you get to that point to where it's like, okay, I've done it, I've accomplished something. Sometimes it's not until you see and until you meet somebody who's accomplished a little bit more and they knock you down a notch or two, and you realize, oh, I could be a little better.
Yeah.
I could be a little better. We've chatted about that. One of the things it's funny because our kids are still talking, and at some point we've got to stop talking about it. I mean, when we get into the baseball season, we'll stop talking about it. But like I created a really, really, really tough schedule for our baseball team this year, right? And one of the reasons
got Megs twice.
Got Megs twice, yeah. We got Megs twice. We got Warren twice. We got Athens. We got Jackson. We're going up to Lancaster. We're playing some really, really difficult teams. We're going to scrimmage Berlin Highland, the state champion that beat us in the regional this past year as well. But the whole point of that is and one of the speakers at the American Baseball Coaches Association convention said this. It was one of the coaches for UConn who basically. When he took the job as a 36-year-old, when they were in the tank, I mean, bottom of the ACC, they weren't playing anybody, just local schools around them, some teams that they could beat easily. He was like, you know what? We started creating a different schedule, a different scheduling philosophy in our non-league schedule, and we went out and played, SEC schools and schools that we knew that these are schools that are in Omaha every year. These are schools that if we ever want to be it, we got to go see it. And that was actually his word. His word was, we can't be it if we don't see it. Yeah. And like you might think that you can be something really great, and you might think that you're even there, but then all of a sudden you play a team that really is there, and you're like, whoa, we're not quite there yet. And if we want to be there, we've got to see that a little more often. And I like that's what you said in. Kid, we've got to learn to we've got to compare ourselves. We've got to look and see. I'm not there yet, and that's where I'm at. Like I'm like, you know what? Yeah, we're good guys. We're pretty good, but we want to be better. We've got to be better. And the only way that you're going to see how much better you got to get is to go see a couple of schools they're already there, to play Megs twice.
Yeah, I think comparison takes the focus off your disposition, like off the result, where you are, who you are, and focuses it on the process of growth and maturation. So when you think about being satisfied, you don't want to be satisfied with where you're at or who you are or the type of person that you are. You always want to be getting better. The only way you can get better is through process. You want to be satisfied with the process that you're going through.
Contentment and satisfaction or being satisfied are two different things.
Sure.
Yeah.
I love the concept of the process, right? Like fall in love with the process of what's making you better. Because if the end result's winning, what happens when you win? Like the Super Bowl was the other day, right? Eagles win the Super Bowl. If it was all about just winning the Super Bowl, now what?
Yeah.
And again, at 43 years old, I don't want to be like, I've done this, now what? Like there's this process that I'm trying to put myself through, like every day get better at something and enjoy the process of getting better. And at the end of my life, if I got better at something every day, we did a good thing. Comparison, we're not talking about keeping up with the Joneses. Like, so in life, we're not talking about getting a big house because your neighbor's got a big house, right? I think in life, it's about being content with what you have, right? And being okay that I have what I have and this is good enough, okay? But in sports, it's a competition. It's me versus someone else. And in order for me to be the best that I can be, I have to know that there's others that are better than me, and I have to train, right? What's the old saying, right? To be number one, train like you're number two, right? I used to love that, and that's the concept. But I think what happens, and I can look back at my life and kind of, this is what happened to me as a naive kid from Southern Ohio who just didn't have enough exposure. YouTube and all these things weren't around, right?
Yeah.
Is I was basing what I thought I deserved based upon the praises that I was receiving. from newspapers, from coaches. Gosh, you're doing great. You're doing everything. I wish you're a great human being. I'm like, yes, I'm all these things. But all of those praises they gave me still didn't get me what I was wanting, which was a full ride scholarship in sports, right? And but man, when you come to OU, and every summer, so then you had there was like I forget what they called it, freshman camp or rookie camp, so everyone, all the incoming freshmen came like 3 days early. So for the first time, you're seeing 15, 17 guys who are freshmen just like you, coming from all parts of the country. And right away, like I just remember walking, there's a guy that played football with us. His name was Snake. We called him Snake. He's from Chicago. Wonderful athlete. Pretty successful here at OU as well. But I remember walking behind him and looking at his calves. And I thought, he's got big calves. Right? But that's also something that I think men do. We compare ourselves to other people like that. And I just remember looking like, okay, he's muscular. I'm not. I'm 225. I'm a mean, nasty 225. But now looking back, I'm like, no, you were a chubby 225 trying to play running back at a D1 level, and that's why you didn't get a scholarship. So again, there's the self-assessment that came through. But that was every summer. Every summer, right? When you came back for your 2-a-day camp, they ushered up the freshmen, and they stood in front of you and they said their name and their position, and you're like, he said running back. That's my competition.
Yeah.
And you're like, and most of the time you're like, geez, he looks pretty ripped. I wonder how fast he is. I wonder how high he can jump, because those are the things that separate us, And so that happened every year, and that's when I tell that story about looking in the mirror like, Justin, you have lived in this falsehood of living what everyone else was saying about you, and you never really looked at yourself and the process that you've put yourself through, and this is why you come up short. I would not have given myself a scholarship looking back, right? The mentality was there, everything was there. I just didn't apply it to what I needed to be doing. And then when I went to a camp, went to the West Virginia football camp, and I just remember, once again, this is kind of a false fact that I was better than I was, is I won the 40 in my age group. So 18-year-olds ran the 40. So they did it by age group, and I won the 40. I'm like, man. Came to West Virginia football camp and won the 40. So I ran a 4.8. I think it was like a 4.83 or something. And I just remember they gave me a plaque and everything. I still got it at the house. And I was like, man, look at me. 4.8 40. Then you come to OU that freshman year, and there's guys running 4.5s. You're like, oh man, look at me. I praised myself for achieving an award. Great. This is why I struggle, guys, quite a bit with awards these days, because they give athletes a false sense of security that you've made it. And maybe you haven't. There's more work to do.
Yeah. You've made it to a certain point.
Yeah, like congratulations. You were the fastest 18-year-old at the Don Nealand head football coach football camp. But that didn't mean anything. Didn't mean a thing. And, so compare yourself to others. If you want to be the best, you've got to see the best and be like, what can they do better than me? And I'm just one of those guys where earn your play. Like, quit making excuses. It's not your coach's fault. If you look in the mirror and you're like, where am I athletically? I guarantee you, if you're honest with yourself, and a lot of people can lie to themselves. That's why, like, you got to stop lying to yourself and be like, there is work for me to do. And when I talk about the mentality that I've finally starting to tap back into, it's that mentality. Quit lying to yourself. If you're not achieving something, start writing down why, and check mark every one of them that's you, and then get to work.
Yeah.
What about kids that don't have that desire? What if you have a group of kids, or just a kid? Let's focus on a kid that said, I just play baseball in the spring to have fun, coach.
Then you're going to have to be okay with a mediocre team as a coach. Because here's the thing that you run into in southeastern Ohio, okay? There's 25 guys on my soccer team last year. 23, I think. Yeah, 23 guys on my soccer team last year. 5 of them wanted it with all they had. The rest of them were just there. I talked to a coach
It's the nature of the beast, isn't it?
It is. I talked to a coach, and his honesty was fantastic. Right? He's a local coach of a local high school here. And I said, I'm trying so hard to build the numbers and and just get the numbers up so we can pull for more athletes. And he said, why? He says, why increase your numbers? I said, what? Because we need the athletes. He says, I would rather have 16 guys who want to play than 25 mediocre ones. And here we are, 2025, and that statement made me reflect. I'm just like, you know what? I'm judged as a coach based upon whether I win or lose. I'm trying to impact kids in the right way and teach them about a mentality. I use sports as a tool now. Like, sports as a tool to prepare you for life. All right? I'm not doing you any favors in the game of life if I'm playing a little bit of favoritism, if I'm being okay with you not giving great effort. Like, I know what that's going to look like in a marriage. I know what that's going to look like in a job. I know if you're a guy who shows up late for every practice, you're going to be the guy who shows up late to work and wondering why you don't
have the job. Yeah.
Like I just see it, and I've seen it a lot the last 3 and 4 years. And when he said that to me, I'm like, as a coach, I probably would do kids more a benefit by being honest with them and being like, you made the team. These are the standards to make a varsity soccer team. And I feel like what we've done in sports, especially at the high school level, is we're lowering these standards of like, hey guys, like, it's all right, just you're late sometimes, it's no big deal. You're playing this sport too, you're playing AAU, you're playing travel, you're going to miss 4 days this week, but you're going to be there for the game on Saturday. I'm going to start you anyway. It doesn't work. It doesn't work in building a mentality of we are a team, put others above yourself. It just doesn't work, man. It breaks down. It just breaks everything. There's too many holes to be wishy-washy, and I've learned from raising kids, like, you give a kid a little spot where he thinks, oh, there's a little spot right here, mom and dad differ, boy, they learn it. Well, imagine 16, 17, 18-year-old kids. The coach is he fudges it right here, and they'll take it.
Mm. There are teams, I've learned, I've gone from coaching at Athens where we always had a JV team, and actually a couple years we tried to talk the administration into supporting a freshman team, where we had those kinds of numbers, to now coaching in a small school division where you don't know if you're going to have enough to have a JV team or not. Mm-hmm. Now fortunately we have had the numbers to have JV, but there are schools in our same division, same size schools who do not have JV teams. And I've met a couple of coaches over the past 5 years that I've been at Eastern who have told me they intentionally don't have a JV team. Mm-hmm. And I thought, that's kind of weird. Like, how do you because in my mind, I'm like, you're building a program with your JV team. And I actually had one coach tell me, I would rather have 13. I'd rather have 13 that I know when they show up every single day, they're going to compete hard and we're going to win. They're here to win. Yeah. And he said, if that means I never have JV because I got 13 guys that want to be here and they want to compete and win, that's what I'll take. Now, it's a whole different philosophy, but it has worked for this school over the years.
Yeah, it speaks to what Justin's saying there.
Yeah.
About if you allow that mentality into the program, then it's a mediocre mentality.
Yeah. And once it's in there, like, it's not something you can just go in there and erase real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Once being mediocre is there, I'm telling you, man, it usually leaves when the coach leaves.
Yeah.
Like, when I look back at my time at OU, like, we had Coach Grove for a year. Guys loved him. We won. Then he left and went to Wake Forest. Then we had Coach Schnorr, and guys just they didn't believe in the system, man.
Mm-hmm.
Right? 2 years after that, you got Solich. 2 years after we graduated, they're playing in a bowl game. Total flip of the switch. What happened? Different mentality came to town, and so we're mediocrity and, caring more about getting home and getting uptown. No, we're going to care about winning some football games. I'm going to build men to play the sport at a high level.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, though, and I think I talked to Chris a little bit this before you got here, Pat. Like, there's got to be a standard in sports. And at a high school level, the standard is do we have enough for a varsity team? Okay, we do. Oh, do we have enough for a JV? Okay, good. We'll put you on JV and we'll take the best of them. But even those guys that make varsity, like what are they striving for? And that's why for me now, like recorded standards, right? If you're going to play soccer, can you run a 7-minute mile at 15 years old? Right? I don't train. I could run a 7-minute mile at 43. Right? How fast can you run? How jump? Like can you dribble the soccer ball? Like there's tools there that you can measure yourself. So when a parent comes to me like, you're not playing so and so, I know. I know, because he didn't elevate his game at all. And there's a freshman who's coming in who's faster and can play harder and listens better.
And here's the proof.
Here's the proof.
Yeah.
Same way, like when we get jobs, right? Hopefully there is still the probation period where you get evaluated. Like, here, this is what you did well. You were late 6 times in the first 30 days, 60 days, however long your probation period is. All right, if you're late, I remember getting a job in Louisiana, and I was a pipe fitter at Poly Processing. They had a swipe card, so when you showed up to work, you went in there and you swiped the card. And this was the structure. Like, I love structure. I love the structure that sports brings. So that swipe card became a competition to me, because I'm like, guys would just be tardy. And I'm like, nah, no way, dude, tardiness, you can't be tardy. So every day, man, you had to swipe in by 6. And I was like, I will be there. And I'm a guy that's like, it's funny because I'll be late to a lot of stuff because I run behind. But once I knew that there's an element there that someone's going to use to measure if I'm on time, I'm like, I'll be on time every time. And that mentality, I loved it.
Yeah.
And that's the mentality that sports brings. If there's something that you're holding athletes responsible for, because every parent thinks their child is amazing at sports. And this would be my ask to you, the parent, is please take one step back and compare your child to the rest of the team and be honest. They're not as good as you think they are, right? If they're spending more time on video games than they are training their craft, they're backwards. They've got it backwards. If they want to play sports, right? End of the day,
Yeah.
I just want some people who roll with me and who put as much time and energy and effort into getting better as I do as a coach. And when I've got to leave my family and my children and I'm sacrificing my time that I don't get back, right? That's the one thing I've got to give to people that I can't get back is my time. That I want to surround myself with people who aren't taken from me, they're given to me as well. And as a coach for years, I let kids take, I let parents take, put on weight, got miserable. And after this season, man, it just changed. I'm like, you know what? What made me successful as an athlete and our team successful? When we elevated one another, when we cared about one another, we encouraged one another, then that's what I want to try to build. So
For sure.
You got my
Yeah.
brain swirling here.
yeah, that's the same. You guys start. I got to try to write things down because there's just so many things. Like at the end of all of this and the end of this day, I still think that the difference that you need to make is in yourself first. Changing yourself, holding yourself accountable. Don't lie to yourself, man. Don't lie to yourself. Like, I had a buddy, Nathan Hill. I talked to him quite a bit. Good friend of mine. Has his leg amputated, and I was talking to him one day, and he's like, "I'm just tired of lying to myself." I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "I'm so tired of making promises and then breaking them to myself." And he says, "If I'll break a promise to myself, I'll break it to anybody." I'm like, "Man, you're so right."
Yep.
And that's
Good
kind of
point.
what flipped me, man. I'm like, quit lying to yourself. Get to living, man, or get to dying. So
Yeah. When are we going to be able to find Walk On Academy on out in the podcast world?
The plan is to drop it hopefully the last day of this month.
There we go.
Get some episodes recorded after learning from you today, and then drop them the last day of the month, and hopefully let people know they got a place that they're valued and there's worth there. You're a walk on, and that's a mentality that you can carry with you in every avenue of life, and don't give up. Don't take no for an answer. No surrender. Play harder and give it all you got.
So it's going to be more than he's not just talking about recruiting. it's not just for high school students and recruiting. It's a mentality.
It's a mentality.
It's a walk-on mentality that's going to be really valuable for everybody who listens to our show. Should definitely check that out at the end of this month.
Appreciate that.
Absolutely. We'll link to you. No doubt. I mean, if you enjoy podcasts like this is what I mean. This is what it's about. I teach a podcast class here on campus, and I was just telling my students yesterday. I'm like, not everybody. We were talking about the difference between the haves and the have-nots in the podcast world, because really there's a small 1% of people who make a lot of money doing podcasting. And to be quite honest, the majority of those people were already famous, and then they started a podcast. Yep. And so now they've got an immediate 14 million listeners or followers, because they already had 14 million people who knew who they were anyway, because of these movies they played in and whatnot. But the majority of people who do podcasts, it's a slow burn. Yeah. And it's also just as much for you as it is for the people that you're doing it for. And so like you're going to find by making the commitment to sit down and develop content on a weekly basis, whether you've got guests or you're doing it on your own, you're going to find that that's a personal point of growth for you on a weekly basis, just because well, one, it's what somebody asked me one time why I enjoy preaching, and my answer was I love what it requires of me, because every single week it requires me, one, to obviously get in the Word of God, but also it requires accountability for me, how I live, how I treat my wife, how I go about if I'm going to stand up before people and proclaim the gospel and tell them this is the life that Jesus requires and desires of you and what He wants from you. I better be living that, and not perfectly, obviously, but even living in the grace of God as well. But the same is true for this podcast. I love what it requires of me, because if we sit here and talk about something that we want to recommend other people to learn from and to grow from, by gosh, I better go back and do it myself. Yeah. And so you're going to find, we just encourage everybody. So like you would think that it'd be one of those things where you'd be like, well, we don't want too many of these to start, because that takes away from our audience. And it's the opposite. Yeah. It's the opposite. It's like when we go to the baseball coaches clinic, one of the things I was talking to a football coach buddy not long ago about the football coach clinic. Well, it was, Parker was talking about how their OU football coaches went to the OHFCA, the Ohio Football Coaches Conference, this past week. Yeah. And he said, and I asked him about the dynamic, and he said, because he said, they're giving us speech on RPOs, how to run their offense. But he said, they're not giving everything, right? Because they're not like they'll give the concepts and everything, and then it's going to be up to every high school coach or whatever who wants to install that to figure out some of the nuanced aspects of it. And I said, that's interesting, Parker, because I tell you, it's the opposite with the baseball coaches clinic, isn't it? We're an open book. There isn't anything we won't tell you, and I think it has to do with the nature of the game as well. Like on a baseball field, there aren't any secrets. Like we know, if somebody squares the bunt, we got a pretty good idea of what the defense is going to look like, because we do the same thing.
It's kind of funny, like 35. Why don't you just call
exactly
third base in, first base in?
Yeah. There's a runner on first and second, so you're probably not going to charge here, right? There's a chance that we're actually going to do the same thing that 90% of the other teams do. But it's just it's one of those things where I love hanging out with coaches, because I know that I'm going to learn a lot and grow a lot, and the same reason why I'm still looking for podcasts that are exactly like the one that I do. Yep. I go on Spotify and I search for coaching podcasts, because I want to know more as well, and so I'm looking forward to following yours.
Yeah, absolutely.
As well.
It's funny you said that there's so many, and that's what keeps people from wanting to get in there. Like, there's so many, it's hard for me to find my niche. But if you look at the podcasting and your voice that you have, and I think the life that you live is your testimony. And if you have anything to share with somebody, that's important, because the church it's one body made up of many members. Every member has a different personality, right? A different way to connect to people. So I think that's one of the whole reasons I'm trying to get this out for myself now, is like, there's somebody who's going to relate to me. And if not, they can find, maybe through me and through you guys, they can find someone who's going to relate to them, who they can relate to, and help them get back on the right path of whatever it is they're trying to get to. You can relate to people, man.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think you can put away the imposter syndrome feeling too, because like when we sat down and started doing our podcast, the foundation of what we talked about and what we believed in was based in the fact that we screwed it up so many times.
Yeah.
You know, so for you to go out and to say, hey, this is the way you should live your life.
Yeah.
To your credit, you've said this. I haven't been doing it the way that I want to do it.
Yeah.
I lost that mentality for a certain period of time, and I have it back. So I think there's power in that.
Yeah.
So
I think too, in losing it really what is I willingly gave it away.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the thing. It's like, all right, I've got kids who I want to be successful men. I got a daughter who I want her to hold her husband accountable like my wife does. Like, that girl is a beast. You know what I mean? Like, she doesn't let me stray away from anything. She holds me accountable, makes sure if I'm saying I'm a man, then she's like, I'm going to treat you like you're a man. And if you're going to fall short, I'm going to let you know. And so put people around you, listen to a podcast of people who will encourage you to be better and live your life to the fullest, because you sure don't want to fall short in this thing.
No way.
cool.
I appreciate you guys letting me come on today, man. You guys are good people and
100%.
good service, and I think if there's anything that can come out of your guys' podcast that people get to, I hope they see that you're getting people to possibly think differently than they've been coached, and to look at athletes differently possibly, and if things are changing, like, hey, what can we do to still reach these people, because we still need to win, right? How do you do that when kids and their family structure is changing? How do you influence them to change and still play sports at a high competitive level? So you guys are doing a great thing, man.
Yeah, appreciate you stopping in. And anytime you want to come on, you're more than welcome.
No doubt.
Thanks, guys.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Good deal. Well, I tell you what, we'll go edit this thing down, and you can see the other part of that, the posting part of it. So yeah,
I'm gonna skip out on that, guys.
Good deal. Well,
see you, everyone.
Bye.